What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Hey, yesterday Nintendo actually talked about the Switch 2, more than I was expecting even, since they've now confirmed a major feature for the platform, and we're going to go over that here today. We also have Nintendo's financials to take a look at to see how they're doing in the first 6 months, which kind of makes sense now, actually, why they made that Switch 2 announcement. Then we also have the PlayStation 5 Pro out tomorrow with some of the specifications, bringing up teraflops and a whole conversation there. And we do have that Hogwarts Legacy sequel that's technically been announced, and it appears they're going to try something very ambitious with it. So a lot to go over, guys. If you enjoy these videos, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and of course, make sure you're subscribed to the channel here. We're every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, going over all the different news in gaming. And we're going to start today with Metal Slug Tactics, which is a title I've been looking forward to. I think the idea of taking this game into just this new genre with this tactical RPG experience is very intriguing, especially to me who does enjoy a lot of these tactical RPGs, especially one that looks like it's straight out of that Super Nintendo PS1 era. Well, we do have the Metacritic score as reviews did come in, and it's currently sitting at a 78. Okay, that's on 24 critic reviews. That's okay. It's maybe slightly lower than I was hoping. I mean, look, IGN gave it an 8. They didn't even settle on a 7 for this one. But I did check around at some reviews. I think the best one I saw that really went in depth and showed a lot of stuff off was from Switch Up, which I'll leave linked down below. Check that one out. But really, the art style, it looks like Metal Slug, just in this tactical setup, which the Metal Slug does have a very distinctive art style, kind of that really, I think, high quality animation, but with sort of that 1632-bit look. And it does seem like it's a very intricate tactical style, and it's on Game Pass. That does kind of help out as well, since I'll just be downloading it there technically, which I already have on my Xbox, and I'll play it there to check it out. But yeah, Metal Slug Tactics is out now, so if you've been curious, check out the reviews. Like I said, Switch Up is down below, and then see what you think of it after that. Also, we have speculated quite a bit around the idea of Microsoft maybe moving to next generation hardware at the end of 2026, but it appears we may have another piece of hardware to look forward to from them, and this is definitely rumor territory, but it is intriguing to consider, as we can see this. This is transcribed over on Pure Xbox. It's from the Xbox 2 podcast with Corden. Says, little birdie has told me that you might see genuinely new hardware next year, maybe of some form for Xbox. I don't think you're going to see hardware at the Game Awards. Remember, they did unveil the Xbox Series X for the first time there. But I do think next year is a good year for revealing new hardware, especially hardware you can hold in the palm of your hand. So it's been, it hasn't been a well-kept secret that Microsoft is working on a handheld, and I've been trying to figure out exactly when launch timing would be for it, and it seems like here Jez is implying that a new Xbox handheld would actually be set up for launch in 2025. I've wondered if they were going to hold it and do a dual SKU or 2 SKU release for their next generation system, the next generation offering in 2026. But I guess technically the way Microsoft is looking at things now, it's not really that generational divide anymore, and maybe it will just legitimately be devices that are kind of like, sort of like phone upgrades, but also letting other companies, other manufacturers come in and use the Xbox tag to create their own systems. That's something that's been floated, and the idea of a handheld maybe just being presented next year, not necessarily as a new generation, but just a new Xbox device, might play into that. Today's video is sponsored by Rec Room. Now available on Nintendo Switch for free, Rec Room lets you play, build, and explore millions of rooms together with friends. So I jumped on, made a character, and spent some time checking out a bunch of these different rooms with RGT.
Hello.
One room had us visiting a McDonald's where we either served food or were the customer.
Hey, don't forget, they don't need Nintendo Switch Online to play this game.
Thanks, Sean. Just gonna run you over with a car now. Another room turned things into a first-person shooter with paintball at a prison. They even have a basketball court out back to shoot some hoops. Rec Room does support voice chat natively on Switch, so you can chat back and forth in real time when you're playing. If you're someone who is much more creative than myself, Rec Room lets you create your own rooms and games along with customizing your dorm room and avatar. Rec Room is available to install for free on the Nintendo eShop and supports full crossplay, so you can play with your friends no matter what device they're on. Speaking
of which, Rec Room is currently available almost everywhere with support for iPhone, iPad, Android, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox, PC, Steam, and all of the major VR platforms like Quest, Steam VR, Pico, and PSVR. Click the link in the description below to check out Rec Room today. Thanks to Rec Room for sponsoring today's video.
And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and the Switch 2, as we're not talking about rumors or speculation or some random factory leak of a person running past the conveyor belt and taking a picture of what looks like the shell of a Switch. In this case, it is Nintendo themselves releasing information, and of course it going along with the investors report and Q&A that was coming up at the time of this recording with investors. But it is good news, especially if you're someone with a large Switch library at this time. We can see this posted up. This is over on Nintendo's their Nintendo Co. Limited official account here, where they say this is Furukawa. Just in case you're wondering. At today's corporate management policy briefing, we announced that Nintendo Switch software will also be playable on the successor to Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the successor to Nintendo Switch as well. Further information about the successor to Nintendo Switch, I said that quite a few times, including its compatibility with Nintendo Switch, will be announced at a later date. Okay, so yes, it's backwards compatible. Go figure. And your Nintendo account, your Nintendo Online account, will also work. Actually, your Nintendo Switch Online, which maybe plays into the idea that the naming, or I don't know if they're going to rename their Nintendo Switch Online. I think we all figured it's going to be Nintendo Switch 2 at this point. The Switch logo with a 2 next to it or something. I would play it safe here. You have a good brand, go with that. But I did see some people wonder why exactly they announced this. Well, as they mentioned, if you look in their briefing that they released on page 8, they spend those 2 pages, page 8 and 9, just going over Nintendo Online and how it has worked to build up this user base that they can rely on to buy their software and, yes, make money off of. Again, they're speaking with investors. How are we making money? Well, these people who have these Nintendo Switch Online accounts are very much plugged in, and they've shown that they are investing quite a bit in our platform. So we want to maintain that relationship going to next generation with the successor, and here's how we're going to do it. This online account will transfer over, I assume seamlessly, as in you're just going to put your information in, boom, you're signed in. Oh yeah, and also the software that they've already bought will also work. Now, it is important to note, they didn't necessarily say the cartridges will work. I am going to assume that that is also what they're implying here. Now, that could also be like, oh, Nintendo Switch Online, that will carry over their purchases on their account, and we'll work out how the cartridge thing will happen later. I feel like, though, we're going to have that similar situation, DS and 3DS, where it's technically different for the 3DS cartridges, but the DS will work there too. But this is great news. It's confirmation around the idea of backwards compatibility, which we all figured, but we didn't know 100%. Now we do. I mean, this is Furukawa, as they said, they're saying it, so okay, we're good to go on that front. But you might be wondering, why exactly did they make this announcement? Like, why'd they put it in the briefing? Well, for that, we have to go to their financials. Next up, let's take a look at the last 2 quarters for Nintendo with their financial briefing that they released. They kind of threw everything together here for the past 6 months for them. Remember, that would start in April. So April, May, June, July, August, and September, which technically also gives us a look at how Echoes of Wisdom did in like the last week, technically, of this financial report. But we could take a look at the main page here, where they show off the system and everything with the software, and we can see the system now at 146.04 million units sold. That's technically trailing the DS and the PS2 roughly by about 10 million or so, right? I know Sony came out and said 160 million for the PS2, but just what we have recorded, they say it's like 155 or so million. So it's close, right? 9 to 10 million, and I think it will eventually get there. Now, Nintendo did sell 2.62 million Switch systems this past quarter, and then with the previous quarter, again, they kind of told us about 6 months, came out to 4.72 million. Now, the sales and operating profit that they showed here, that's on page 3 of their report, you can see it's pretty much down across the board. We have net sales down 34%, operating profit down 56%, ordinary profit down 61%, net profit down 59%. Again, a lot of minuses here. Not exactly a great report for Nintendo. And because of all of this, they have worked to revise down their expectations, their forecast for this current fiscal year. So rather than 13.5 million hardware or pieces of hardware sold, they've removed it down to 12.5. Same with software, lowered that by about 5 million units. And I gotta say, I don't think they'll be able to hit that either. I'm kind of thinking it's gonna be in the realm of 11 to 11.5 million. So my best guess is after this holiday period, they'll come back and lower it again. Most likely. I just think there is a lot of momentum that's been, or the system has been losing a lot of momentum over the last 6 months. And even having, I'd say, decent enough software, like they don't have a Tears of the Kingdom. They say that themselves. Hey, we're competing against Tears of the Kingdom. We don't have that technically, but we do have a bunch of other titles, which we can look at. Zelda Echoes of Wisdom at 2.58 million. Again, less than a week or so reported here. I think it's pretty good for a top-down sort of Zelda game. Again, not Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, but still one that I think had a budget that was a bit more under control with that. A Paper Mario Thousand Year Door at 1.94 million. Now, that did outsell the original GameCube release. It appears to have lost quite a bit of sales momentum, though, so I don't know if that's going to get to Origami King, and I wonder what message that's going to send Nintendo. Same with Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, 1.57 million, and that's the thing we mentioned. Their software sales are also down. I know, again, they're competing against Tears of the Kingdom, but it does kind of seem like these games, maybe they just weren't moving the needle in terms of excitement for the Switch base, but didn't necessarily sell as much as Nintendo was expecting because they also had to lower their expectations on software. That's down 27%, their hardware down 31%, and the thing I want to mention here, we just talked about the Switch 2 backwards compatibility. I think they made that announcement because they do realize that the software is down. It's down more than they thought, and maybe they're thinking, hey, if we just announce that this new system that they're going to show us the next 4 to 5 months, right? Or they'll make that a full announcement. If we just tell them that the software they buy this holiday will still work on it, maybe they won't second guess it. That is my read on that situation there. Anyway, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, just for fun, sold 1.37 million units last quarter. Absolutely ridiculous. And then if we take a look at page 16 on their financial briefing here, we do have their upcoming release schedule, which does include Mario & Luigi Brothership, Fitness Boxing 3, which I believe they're publishing in certain regions. Then we have Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, Pokemon Legends ZA, that's just 2025, as well as Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on 2025. And then they put the Alarmo in there. So unfortunately, no new release dates here for Pokemon Legends or Metroid Prime 4. Now, it does appear that Nintendo stock did drop after this report. It went down 4% during trading hours, then 4% after hours. So yeah, Nintendo was going to kind of take a beating on their stock after turning in a lot, as I said, a lot of minuses when compared. They're not exactly great on the revenue front. We do even have Dr. Circontoto here pointing this out. And then Reuters also had a report saying Furukawa said there was no change to Nintendo's plan to announce a successor to its long-lasting Switch console in the current financial year to March, but did not go into specifics. Toyo Securities analyst Hideki Yatsuda said Nintendo shares could remain under pressure in the near term as announcement on the new console, a major catalyst for the stock, seemed unlikely by the end of the calendar year, which, yeah, if you're a heavy investor and you have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, we'll say even in Nintendo, and you're realizing, oh, it's not going to pay off this holiday, and that would have been a great time to at least have some kind of announcement, get excitement around the brand, yeah, maybe we'll move some of the money around and come back to Nintendo later. And that's the thing. Whenever Nintendo does make that announcement, the stock's going to shoot up. There'll be a lot of excitement around it. But it does feel like Nintendo is taking a bit longer to the point where they're just dropping random tweets and announcements like that. Like, oh yeah, there is backwards compatibility. Oh yeah, we are going to announce this thing this fiscal year. It's kind of odd the way that they are doing this, but I do think the biggest factor here is the software. I think the hardware is ready. I think it's the software that they're trying to make sure lines up because they are, for the most part, relying on themselves with first-party software first. So, for example, that new 3D Mario, maybe it's taking a little longer to get done. The new Mario Kart, same thing there, which is weird to say because the last Mario Kart came out in, brand new one, Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, 2014. So, been more than 10 years, but still, nonetheless, that's kind of what I think they're doing, setting up their software lineup to really get the system off and running quickly. So at least we know now backwards compatibility is confirmed, and I assume they'll probably be able to recover from this sort of report going into next year when they finally make that Switch 2 announcement. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro as it is out tomorrow, and I'm sure there are many people out there who are excited about it, as well as I know there's a lot of contention around this system. Remember though, it is optional, and people do have a lot of fun with new hardware, so I'll be checking it out tomorrow, and we'll see what we get out of this one. Of course, we'll be tearing it down and going a bit further there, but we did have a spec sheet that was making the rounds. I wanted to point something out here. We can see this as posted up. This is over on Insider Gaming, who has this image here, and I mean, the big thing here, yes, it's still using the same processor. We already know that. But we already knew that before, a Zen 2 chipset there. 2 gigabytes of DDR5, which should help with system-level operations and free up some of the faster memory in games for developers, which you figure they would want to use for things like 8K or just 4K in general and the game running better. But the big one that people keep pointing to, and it's so funny we come back to this again, are teraflops. There was this thing going around about 33 teraflops. I think people were just reading it wrong with floating point operations. And the bottom line is, yes, the system, technically raw power, 16.7 teraflops. Sony already told us that though, in a roundabout way. They told us it was 45% more powerful in terms of rendering and that kind of thing. And sure, you can do the math yourself in that front, but really what it comes down to here with Sony and the PlayStation 5 Pro is the idea of PSSR and the system being developed with that in mind from the start. Like right away, hey, in order to attain some of these higher resolutions and better frame rates, and even try to tackle 8K, we're going to develop our own like machine learning AI upscaling technique with PSSR that I do believe is something that will grow, similar to DLSS, where it started out wasn't like, okay, this is incredible, like game-breaking stuff, but eventually got to the point where it was like, whoa, all right, this new DLSS, like 3.0 and up, is just, it's incredible stuff. I think that's what we're seeing from Sony here, and that's what this system is mostly being developed to utilize. So the teraflop count, which again, I think is going to become much less relevant in the future. It's kind of already less relevant now, and it'll come up again with the Switch 2 when we find out, oh, it's 4 teraflops. How's this going to work? And then we see like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or something on there years from now. We're like, this looks incredible. Again, upscaling techniques, I think, are going to be the big focus point, especially going into next generation, and this is Sony's latest offering here with PSSR. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the sequel to Hogwarts Legacy that WB Interactive was really excited to make an announcement for, since again, investors love to hear this kind of stuff when you go, oh yeah, that game that, by the way, has sold 30 million copies, is just mind-blowing stuff. We're making a sequel to it, we're gonna do it even better. Yeah, obviously, they're going to like that. It sounds like a bunch of money. But it seems like they're going a step further, even stepping outside of video games for this release. We can see this posted up. This is over on VGC, who says, David Haddad, president of Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment, said Warner Bros. Games is working on a Hogwarts Legacy follow-up, which he described as a very big priority for the company's top executives. We kind of already heard about that, but Haddad said the sequel will share some big picture storytelling elements with Warner Bros. Television's upcoming Harry Potter series, which is targeted to hit HBO in 2026. Okay, this is going to be an interesting one, because it does appear they're going to... I wonder if they're going to attempt to have this game out around that time. They said it's like a few years from now they'll have this this follow-up to Hogwarts Legacy ready to go, and they could put it next to this series and that just basically trades plot points back and forth or pulls from lore that the series introduces. And games are less predictable in development most times than something like a TV series or a movie. Sometimes you get Blade, which can't seem to get off the ground, but other times you have a very, I'd say a very like straightforward development when it comes to a movie, as opposed to a game that is just constantly zigzagging all over the place. So while I'm sure in their mind and in theory it's a great idea, I do wonder if this could get kind of messy on the video game side. Now, if it's just relying on lore that's introduced by the series, then it probably wouldn't be a big deal if it got delayed out and it came out a year later or something, but it is definitely an ambitious idea, and I guess we'll see how this one works out for them, since clearly they have a property here that is incredibly strong in terms of sales with Hogwarts Legacy, and getting the sequel right, as they say, is definitely a priority. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. Where I ask, when do you think the next Xbox hardware will launch from Microsoft? 2026 is leading there, then 2027, 2028, and then 2025. Oh, I see. Somebody in the comments asked, next hardware is the next generation or current generation model? That's a good question, because if the handheld thing holds up, 2025 would be the correct answer here. But again, I do wonder if Microsoft is leaning away from the generational stuff now, since it's possible the Xbox Series X will still be relevant 10 years from now, won't it? I mean, think about it that way. With how we see the Xbox One still getting games somehow, and the PS4 seems ready to roll into 2026, and these systems are even more capable, the Xbox Series S might be the one that gets kind of left behind by then in 10 years, but who's to say the Series X won't still be relevant? The handheld could still play a lot of these games, and at the bare minimum, yeah, you can cloud stream the titles to these different platforms. So I do wonder how Microsoft is looking at what we typically see as these generational cycles, and if they're ready to move beyond that. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Annan, who says, IGN gave God Hand a 5 as well. Seems IGN is as incompetent at games as Sony is making a live service game. Well, hold on a minute. Technically, IGN gave God Hand a 3 out of 10. So, I mean, I'm not really helping them in this case. Look, it's so funny you bring that up, because that review for that game was 2006, I think. Yeah, 2006. 18 years later, people still remember that review, which is, you can never live that stuff down. And that's just how it goes when you have many different people, some who aren't even there anymore because IGN's just a logo, a banner at this point, right? A company, and people constantly cycle and churn through that company. But these review scores certainly stick with it and build up the reputation of IGN. So yeah, it's not shocking that people look at it and go, it's IGN. What else we got out there? And that's why I recommend others like Switch Up, for example, with Metal Slug Tactics. What I recommend is find a reviewer that you've seen consistently over time, with their views kind of lining up with yours as to what games you like and what games they like and what games they don't, and vice versa there. And then just see what they think about different games that are coming up as they review them. I do also recommend going to as many people as possible just to get an idea of it, especially since now games that are coming out, $70, maybe $80 by next generation. It's not exactly cheap to take a chance on some of these. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you're doing some holiday shopping and are curious about the refurbished Sony PlayStation 5 systems. I actually did an unboxing and a teardown of it. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.